Trump tells congressional Republicans, quote, only a fool would vote for this horrendous border bill. He's right. It guarantees at least 1.1 million illegal immigrants a year. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today, we're going to be talking about this new Senate proposed compromise between Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator James Lankford, Republican of Oklahoma. The so-called border bill, but it includes a lot of foreign aid as well, funding the wars in Ukraine and Israel and Gaza. It's actually $60 billion will be provided for Ukraine, $14 billion for Israel, and $20 billion for additional border security. And there's some confusion about what the thresholds are for emergency border authority to kick in under the terms of the legislation. For weeks, senators such as Ted Cruz out of Texas have been saying that it's going to be 5,000 a day. And until then, the law doesn't have to be implemented. The emergency Title 42 style border removal expulsion or expulsion authority for illegal immigrants would not kick in until that point. So I wanted to go over the provisions of the legislation so that you have an opportunity to see what's actually in the bill. We're always saying you need to read the bill. You really need to read this bill. And we're going to read parts of it today that are applicable for this discussion. First, I wanted to go over to what Trump is saying about this over on Truth Social. If you haven't checked out Truth Social, you can follow Limit Gov there. That's us, Americans for Limited Government. And former President Donald Trump, he's doing great in the Republican primaries and the South Carolina primaries coming up soon on February 24th. No Republican has ever swept Iowa and New Hampshire if he hits all three in a competitive primary. Usually a sitting president will do that fairly easily. Trump's running with what appears to be a similar type of incumbency advantage. He says, quote, only a great fool or a radical left Democrat would vote for this horrendous border bill, which only gives shutdown authority after 5,000 encounters a day, when we already have the right to close the border now, which must be done. This bill is a great gift to the Democrats and a death wish for the Republican Party. It takes the horrible job the Democrats have done on immigration and the border, absolves them, and puts it squarely on the shoulders of Republicans. Don't be stupid. We need a separate border and immigration bill. It should not be tied to foreign aid in any way, shape, or form. The Democrats broke immigration and the border. They should fix it. Make America great again. So there's a few things here. Trump is citing that the president would already have the authority to shut down the border. That's correct under 8 USC 118. 2, subsection F, you'll find the same authority that Trump used to enact travel bans from countries that were known to harbor terrorists in 2017. This was adjudicated, and eventually Trump wins the case at the Supreme Court, basically showing that there's a full authority to have the border shut down right now. Like, you don't have to wait. Biden doesn't need any additional authorities. Here it is. Suspension or imposition of restrictions by president. We could zoom in a little here. I shouldn't have done that. Now it's not in the right spot. Here it is. Suspension or entry of restrictions by president. Whenever the president finds that the entry of any aliens or of any class of aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interest of the United States, he may, by proclamation or for such period as he shall deem necessary, suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as immigrants or non-immigrants, or impose on the entry of aliens any restrictions he may deem to be appropriate. So right there, Trump was able to do travel bans from countries known to harbor terrorists. You could broaden that. He was doing it in, for example, Iraq or Syria or Iran. You could do it to Mexico. You could do it to the countries in Central America or Canada, for that matter. If there's an emergency on the border, the president can declare it to be so when he deems it to be appropriate. That's what the law says. And this was upheld. So if you can do it for a country overseas, I'm not even certain that the terrorist predicate would be necessary. Although I think the drug cartels and gangs coming across the border might be, equally dangerous or even more dangerous if you want to go with body counts about who kills more Americans. Um, in any event, Trump says that only a great fool would go for this. I agree with that. So would Vizini from the Princess Bride. We already covered his Truth Social post. Again, this is 60 billion for Ukraine, 14 billion for Israel, and then 20 billion for additional border security. Now, the money is interesting for additional border security, but not with the strings that are coming attached to this. I say that, Trump's got a point here. If existing authorities were adequate to curb the flow of illegal immigrants across the border, Congress would not even consider mandating such Title 42 like removals, allowing illegal immigrants to be quickly expelled instead of being allowed to seek asylum. The way it's been applied here is to limit their application in the proposed legislation by creating a maximum number of potential asylum applications before any emergency authority can kick in. And I estimate it will be about 1.1 million illegal immigrants will always be allowed to be let into the United States no matter what if this bill happens to pass. It sets at 4,000 a day discretionary application for emergency border authority by the president or the Secretary of Homeland Security. And that's discretion. So if you hit 4,000 illegal immigrants a day on the southern border, we're way past that, by the way. We're up at about 6,700 a day right now. Then the president at 4,000 a day could say, yeah, let's declare the emergency on the border and start doing these expulsions. And then on a mandatory basis at 5,000 a day, but only to reduce the amount by 25%. Why? Because after if once the level reaches 75% of the application level at 4,000 a day, it would be 3,000. At if it starts at 5,000 a day, then the emergency would have to end once it reaches 3,750. And then besides that, then there's in the first year of the bill's application, you can only do it for 270 days. In the second year of the bill, 225 days. And in the third year of the bill, 180 days. Well, that would carry the authorities over into 2025 and 2026. Now, Joe Biden might be reelected. That's possible. But he might not be. Former President Donald Trump might be elected. And then he's going to have this authority that wouldn't really let him secure the border, except when it hits 4,000 illegal immigrants a day, which is way more than we ever saw during the Trump administration, far more. So I say, yes, this guarantees up to 1.1 million asylum applications a year, and there's nothing a president can do to stop it via the emergency authority. Why so high? Now we're going to go under Section 3301 of Division C, Title 3 of the legislation entitled Emergency Border Authority, because some people are expressing confusion about this, including James Lankford, the lead GOP negotiator. He says, I'm a little confused how it's worse than they expected when it builds the border wall, expands deportation flights, expands ICE officers, Border Patrol officers, detention beds. So yeah, there's funding in the bill for this stuff. Nobody's disputing that. It clears up long-term issues and loopholes that existed in asylum law and then gets us an emergency authority. Here's what's controversial. That stops the chaos right now on the border. So he says, I am a little confused. I'll have to get with the speaker's team on that and find out what part would be, quote, worse than we expected based on the actual text. And hopefully they will have all had an opportunity to read through the text. Well, here's Speaker Johnson. Here's Speaker Johnson on February 4th on X.com, formerly Twitter. He says, I've seen enough, quote. This bill is even worse than we expected and won't come close to ending the border catastrophe the president has created. As the lead Democrat negotiator proclaimed under the legislation, quote, the border never closes. If this bill reaches the House, it will be dead on arrival. Dead on arrival. And then here's Steve Scalise. Similarly, on February 4, stating, quote, let me be clear, the Senate border bill will not receive a vote in the House. Here's what the people pushing this, quote, deal aren't telling you. It accepts 5,000 illegal immigrants a day and gives automatic work permits to asylum recipients, a magnet for more illegal immigration. Well, that's just one more reason not to support this. And so we're going to quote from the bill itself. We have it here, the discretionary authority activation for the Emergency Border Authority. When can they start doing these Title 42 style expulsions that were utilized during the COVID emergency? That said, oh, there's a health emergency. You can quickly expel these people. When does that kick in? Quote, the secretary may activate the border emergency authority if during a period of 7 consecutive calendar days, there's an average of 4,000 or more aliens who are encountered each day. Mandatory activation would occur during a period of 7 consecutive calendar days. There's an average of 5,000 or more aliens who are encountered each day, or if on any one calendar day, there's 8,500 or more aliens who are encountered. Okay, so that's one provision, but that works out to at 4,000 a day. Anything, so if it's at like 3,999, the authority cannot be invoked, in which case you get 1.45 million thereabouts illegal entries a year if the average held. Any fewer than 1.46 million, and the president and secretary of Homeland Security would not have the ability to close the border. It would only be activated on a mandatory basis if it hits 5,000 a day. We just covered that. That's a threshold of 1.85 million illegal entries a year if the average held. Any fewer, and an administration would have no obligation to do anything. And the border emergency would be temporary. Again, I had mentioned it would, in the first year, it will be only 270 days. Let's go look at that. The first calendar for purposes, the secretary shall not activate the border emergency authority for more than 270 calendar days during the first calendar year, more than 225 days during the second calendar year, and more than 180 days during the third calendar year. Well, that's going to severely hamper its implementation, as we shall see in a moment. In addition, once the authority gets suspended, in the case of an activation, if there's a period of 7 consecutive calendar days of an average of less than 75% of the encounter level used for activation. So they say, oh, if it you did it at 4,000. Well, if it drops back down to 3,000, oh, that'll be fine. You can do that. But anything more than that, you're not gonna be allowed to do that. So you can't. If it did provide a deterrent and the amount of illegal immigration actually started decreasing, it can only decrease by 25%, and then boom, the authority gets taken off, and then the expulsions stop under the authority. So these are the provisions of the law that I believe House Republicans, Senators Ted Cruz and others are opposing at the moment. The idea is to resume Title 42 expulsions that were used during the COVID emergency, rather than have illegal immigrants be expelled, rather than to be allowed to seek asylum. But like Title 42, the expulsion rate will not be 100%. Now, James Lankford had told CBS News that this will be like Title 42. Yeah, this is similar to what we had under Title 42. Let's go look at that. Let's see, find, go to 42. There you go. Yeah, this is similar to what we had in Title 42 during the pandemic time period, where we reach a crisis point to say we can't actually operate. So we don't have that authority. Right now, as the United States, we've reached crisis points. For instance, when we got 4,000, sorry about the ad, when we got 4,000 or 5,000 people crossing the border, we can no longer process those individuals. So here he's citing that, oh, the reason that we're doing 4,000 and 5,000 as these thresholds is because that's when the immigration system, the federal government, becomes overwhelmed and they can no longer process that many asylum claims, simultaneously. Now, is it merely a paperwork problem? I mean, is the only reason we're implementing this law is to help them keep up with their paperwork as they process all these asylum claims? Is that the only issue? It's like, oh, we would let even more people come in here if we just had more immigration courts to process more asylum claims. Or do we actually have a problem with millions of people coming to the country every single year who don't belong here, who are coming here illegally, and they're skirting the asylum process? There's a lot of catch and release. You come in, you claim asylum, and then you're never heard from again. And this is happening with millions of people. Not everyone even gets to an adjudicatory hearing. Some people just kind of slink into the shadows. And I think that obviously that's been going on for years, but we've never seen this many people coming all at once. And so I don't think this is merely a paperwork problem. I think we have a problem with assimilation of millions of illegal immigrants coming here every single year. And let's just look at these numbers. In fiscal year 2020, there were 400,000 border encounters, even when Title 42 was being used, but only 197,000 were expelled on that basis. So that was during COVID. So as recently as 2020, you can see here there were 197,000 expulsions under Title 42 on the southwest border by the U.S. Border Patrol and the Office of Field Operations. That's another one. They did an additional 7,700 expulsions. So I guess you get up to about 204,000 Title 42 expulsions occurred in 2020. And that was half of the amount of people who had been apprehended. So about a 50% expulsion rate. Moving on, in 2021, there were 1.734 million encounters, of which 1.06 million were expelled. And then in 2022, there were 2.38 million encounters, of which 1.1 million were expelled under Title 42. And you can see here the most recent numbers in 2021 alone, fiscal year. Fiscal years begin on September 30th of the preceding calendar year. So 1.7 million illegal aliens coming into the country who were encountered by Border Patrol. 2022, 2.378 million. 2023, 2.475 million. That is unprecedented. We've never seen numbers like this again. Just back in 2020, the number was 400,000. 2019 was you started seeing evidence of this. It hit about 900,000. But with the numbers we're seeing now are just simply unprecedented, and that's why Congress is considering this legislation. Even Chuck Schumer's willing to put some limit on it, albeit a very high limit. Like you're going to let 4,000 or 5,000 a day into the country. Well, we're doing 6,700 a day right now, as a matter of fact. And now one number you should pay attention to is the 780, the amount of Title 42 expulsions that occurred in 2023, because the COVID emergency was ended. And then we see how much fewer expulsions there were that year. In 2023, there were 2.475 million, but only 578,000 were expelled under Title 42, establishing what happens when the authority lapses, just as it is anticipated to do so under the legislation after 270 days during the first year, after 225 days in the second year, and after 180 days in the third year. You're going to see this number fall off a cliff. So discounting fiscal year 2023, that's an average 52% expulsion rate under Title 42, which James Lankford says this will be similar to, or 2.357 million who were expelled on that basis out of 4.514 million during the COVID emergency from fiscal years 2020 to 2022. Like Title 42 expulsions during the emergency, under the new legislation, there are limits to the usage, including those for those coming to ports of entry and so-called credible fear claims that need to be adjudicated. Now, let's say a president doesn't care if illegal immigration hits 4,000 a day and waits for it to say hit 5,000 a day for a week before doing anything. Now the authority is mandated to be kicked in. And let's be generous and say the amount of encounters remains steady despite the expulsions, as in fiscal years 2020 to 2022. In fact, they accelerated during this time, as we saw from the other chart. The amount during 2020, 2021, 2022, you had Title 42 expulsion authority, and the amount of illegal immigrants kept on increasing. Probably from repeat offenders. People come, they got caught, they got expelled. They just said, oh, just go back and do it again. And so went from 1.7 million to 2.37 million to 2.47 million in consecutive years. So when you have this expulsion authority and you start turning people away, you're just going to turn around and come back tomorrow. So like Title 42, we're going to assume 52% of those encountered are immediately expelled, or 700,000. If you get 5,000 a day, we're looking up to, and we're allowed to do this for 270 days. That adds up to 1.35 million encounters. So we have the authority for the full 270 days. The authority doesn't lapse. And so you get to 700,000, 702,000 are expelled, and then 648,000, they're allowed to stay and seek asylum. Now we've hit the 270-day limit, and so no more Title 42-like expulsions. Now for the other 95 days, we get all 5,000 get to go seek asylum. That's another 475,000. So you add 648,000 to 475,000. That adds up to 1.123 million illegal aliens who will be guaranteed to come in the very first year this law is enacted, under the very provisions that Senator James Lankford said we need to read it based on, quote, the actual text. This is the actual text. It says that we're going to do 4,000 a day on a discretionary basis, or at 5,000 illegal immigrants a day, it's going to kick in on a mandatory basis. And when you do that, you're going to get 1.1 million asylum claimants every single year under the law's application. Or actually, it's going to get worse, because in year 2, we're going to do 225 days. And in year 3, we're going to do 180 days. By design, the law envisions a scenario where in the first year, 3,000 get to come in every day on average, 75% of the 4,000 a day discretionary threshold, to seek asylum without the possibility of emergency removal. So James Lankford had told CBS News that at 4,000 a day or 5,000 a day, we can no longer process those individuals. So he agreed to let it be 3,000 a day, no matter what. That's what the Senate Republican compromise with Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden is going to be. We're going to guarantee 3,000 illegal immigrants a day for eternity. What a great deal. We should sign up for that. In the second year, with only 225 days of emergency removals, at 5,000 a day, the number who get to seek asylum rises to 1.24 million. In the third year, with only 180 days of emergency removals, it rises to 1.35 million. So you got 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. I mean, what are you going to have? That's 3. Then you have 5, 3.5. And so about 3.6 million people will be guaranteed, illegal immigrants, to come into the country under the law that they would pass that's supposed to secure the border and bring this number down to 0. Nuh-uh. This ain't going to bring the number down to 0. This is going to guarantee you get 3.6 million illegal immigrants seeking asylum as a matter of law. And then there's nothing a president can do about it. So if Joe Biden loses the election and Donald Trump wins, Donald Trump will be compelled to take in 3.6 million illegal immigrants when he would rather shut down the border, I believe, using 8 USC 1182F. I think that, yeah, this is a big problem. We can't accept this many people, and no president should be compelled to accept this many people under the basis that's being proposed here. I think that, and the other thing is Joe Biden saying he needs additional authority to do these removals. So it's like, oh, I don't have Title 42 anymore. The COVID emergency is over. Well, gee, what can I do as president? I don't know. Read the law, President Biden, and see that the very thing that Trump did to do travel bans from terrorist countries, you could do right now to shut down the border. any class of aliens. You can just shut it down and say, hey, whoa, there's way too many coming in right now. We're gonna step in and we're gonna override the existing asylum application process, as if we had a need to take in so many asylum claimants. I'm sure everyone in the world would like to claim asylum and maybe come to the United States. That doesn't mean that they're credible asylum cases. And it doesn't mean we can process every single credible asylum case in the world. I don't think that's what our system is designed for. I think you could actually set hard limits on that. Like, what is this 4,000 a day or 5,000 a day? Why don't they make it 1,000 a day or 500 a day? I mean, that would take it down to at least 360,000 or 180,000 a year. There's no reason to allow millions of people to come here to seek asylum when most of them probably don't even qualify. I think it's ridiculous. Now, this is all being generous. These numbers I'd said, 3.6 million guaranteed under the existing law, or under the existing situation, I should say. So we're being generous and saying, well, that's at 5,000 a day on a mandatory basis. But right now it's at 6,782 a day on average. If you take 2.475 million divided by 365, you get 6,782. So at that rate, you would get 1.865 million who will be encountered in the 270-day period. 52% will be removed, or 969,800. That leaves 880,000 who get to seek asylum. And then the other 95 days a year, all 678 at 6,782 a day get to seek asylum. That's another 644,290, plus the 880,000 who were allowed during the 270-day period. That's 1.524 million. You pass this bill right now, you're guaranteed to get another 1.5 million legally allowed asylum claims under the law. And then the second year, that rises to 1.68 million, assuming we stay at the 6,700 mark a day. The third year, it's 1.84 million, which I think is actually reasonable, seeing as the numbers keep escalating every single year when you have this type of authority in place. People are just going to say, oh, I didn't let me in. Let me just come back tomorrow. And they say, oh, we're going to keep track of those people and keep them out for a year. It's like you kept on running at the border, and then you're going to be allowed to do it again a year later or at all. I mean, like, this is not normal. This is not, and I think from Senate Republican perspective, this is certainly not how you negotiate with Joe Biden. He will, he'd rather not do anything, it would appear. Otherwise, he would just invoke 8 USC 1182F. He would just go in and say, yeah, we're shutting down the border, just like Trump's going to do if he gets elected. Now, under no circumstance, other than the caravan ceasing itself to numbers of less than 3,000 a day, could a president ever prevent 1.1 million minimum being allowed, 3,000 a day, being allowed to seek asylum as a matter of law, because he wouldn't be allowed to. You're not allowed to invoke this authority unless the number hits 4,000 a day. So if 3,000 are coming a day, then there's nothing the president can do, which is far more than were ever coming during the Trump administration or any preceding administration. The Title 42 expulsion rate will be similar to what we see under this new law, because Senator Langford told us it would be. Unfortunately, we would have to pass the law to find out what the true expulsion rate would be, but I think it's going to be about 52%. It could be more, it could be less, but they say it's going to be like Title 42. So we should assume that similar numbers. We have a good data set to look at to see how successful Title 42 was. The answer is it was sort of successful, but not really, because it encouraged repeat incursions to the border, where they're saying, oh, if I could just slip past, I'll be home free. I'll never have to deal with the Border Patrol ever again. So it is proper for the House to step in and say we can do better, with House Speaker Mike Johnson declaring the bill dead on arrival. Now, the bill also appears designed to simply help keep up with the federal government's ability to process the flow of illegal immigrants, rather than the country's ability to absorb that many immigrants. Again, he says 4,000 or 5,000 we can no longer process. Why must the House accept these 4,000 and 5,000 a day thresholds and then make that the permanent law of the land? The issue isn't about processing. It's about assimilation and being able to control how many immigrants get to come here every year. It might be more efficient, just like if you want to actually deal with the problem, to just bet on Trump winning and then use 8 USC 1182F to close the border using country bans, rather than locking in 1.7 million illegal immigrants in 2025, 1.8 million illegal immigrants in 2026 as the emergency authority winds down. So they're trying to pass this bill. Maybe they think Biden's going to lose and they want to apply it to Trump. Say, haha, you can't secure the border, Trump. We passed this stupid bill that only a fool would vote for, or a radical. Now, President Biden is saying he needs more authority, but that's not true. The above stated provision gives him the discretion, 8 USC 1182F, and just for, we can, grins and giggles, we'll read it one more time. Whenever the president finds that the entry of any aliens or of any class of aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interest of the United States, he may, by proclamation and for such period as he shall deem necessary, suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as immigrants or non-immigrants, or impose on the entry of aliens any restrictions he may deem appropriate. Biden could do this right now. He's not doing it. And we've never seen numbers like this before. So, if Trump had been reelected and this was happening, I think he would have used this authority by now, to get that number far below even what you could get with the Title 42 expulsions. So Biden doesn't need any additional authority. As Trump noted, the bill is a great gift for Democrats. It takes the horrible job the Democrats have done on immigration, absolves them, and puts it squarely on the shoulders of Republicans. Don't be stupid. I agree with Trump. He's right. There's no reason congressional Republicans should go along with this. If the bill now, they're gonna argue though. They're gonna say, well, right now Biden doesn't have to do anything. It's all discretionary. It's like, no kidding. This is why people voted for Donald Trump in 2016. And he was trying to secure the border, and everyone was telling him, this is not a crisis. We don't have to do anything. Oh, that's racist. You're not allowed to secure the border. Oh, that's mean. Even though Obama is the one who had children in cages, they take pictures from that and then say, see, Trump is putting children in cages. You can't do that. That's mean. That's horrible. That's cruel. And it's like, well, we can't let the whole world come here, because they're trying. They're trying here. 1.7 million in 2021, 2.4 million in 2022, almost 5 million in 2023. We'll see. Maybe we'll hit another record here in 2024. We'll find out soon. Now, if the bill only applied to 2024, so you want to say, oh, well, we're Congress, we're going to try to force Biden to secure the border. Well, if it only applied to 2024, then the proponents of the bill might have a better argument to make. But this still locks in asylum seeking levels for 2025 and 2026 and makes it more difficult to use the authority going forward. And there's no telling how courts might rule on a new law versus an attempt to get around using it, for example, by using 8 USC 1182F. I think that's, do you want to find out if this law jives with the new law? The old law and the new law? Are they going to say, oh, no, you have to follow the new law? Congress clearly had an intention to override 8 USC 1182F. Is that what they would do? Maybe. Let's not find out. Maybe it'd be likely better not to find out. And I do have some closing thoughts on this. I think this is terrible. I don't think, this stuff is, required to take in 1 million of illegal immigrants every year for asylum claims. As a matter of law, they're illegal immigrants, and we're legally would be required to take them in. It's stupid. Again, this is all based on the actual text, as James Langford said we need to read the actual text of the bill, of the now proposed legislation. But he's right about one thing. He says it would be absolutely absurd for me to agree to 5,000 people a day in a Fox News Sunday interview. And so I say, yes, it is absolutely absurd, unreasonable, and illogical, wildly so, that he or any Senate Republican or House Republican, for that matter, would ever agree to allowing 4,999 illegal immigrants every single day on average, and requiring a minimum of 3,000 illegal entries a day, or almost 1.1 million a year under the law. We need to kill the bill. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day. But first, we're going to go to the chat. I'm sure that this makes at least a few of you angry. Thank you, those who are tuning in today. Let's see here. Oh, by the way, you can, in the links in the description, you can actually go. Let me share my screen one more time. I wanted to show you the action alert that we have going here. Did I take it down? No, there it is. You can stop the border insecurity bill. The link's in the description of this video. And you can fill this out and email your members of the House and Senate and tell them to oppose the new legislation. And that'll get sent their way. And, I think we stand a very good chance of killing the bill, if not in the Senate, certainly in the House. But you need to make your voices heard. I hope you'll take the opportunity to do that. And so let's go to the chat here. LJ Cantaloupe says, good day. Good day. Norman Halson says, the bill only promotes more Democrat slavery, the bigot party of Obama. LJ Cantaloupe, I don't know, but this corruption needs to stop. I agree with you, LJ. Probably too late. No, I don't think it's too late. It's never too late. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance. So maybe you don't feel up to the test, but your children and your grandchildren, maybe they'll be up to the test. I'm kidding. This is a never-ending fight for liberty. Well, if they're going to do this, they might as well as make everything free for all, no more courts, taxes, or anything. So you're, I think, alluding to the lawlessness that will occur as a result of having unlimited immigration. So you're saying, well, why should we, if they're not going to follow the laws at the border, why should we pay our taxes? Why should we do other things? I think that's a very good point. LJ Cantaloupe, like it's going to make a difference. He says, do an executive order. LJ Cantaloupe says, it's all by design and planned out. And then he's going. Let's see. I hate to see what the future holds for honest, hardworking Americans with children and grandchildren, with all the drugs and criminals coming into the country. I agree with you. It's so sad. Thank you for the updated information. Greatly appreciated. You're right. Don't give up. No, we cannot afford to give up. We do need to contact our members of the House. You have one representative in the House. You have 2 senators. You need to contact them all and let them know to oppose the Schumer-Lankford bill that's going to guarantee at least 1.1 million illegal immigrants into the country every year. But as I note in my piece, it pays to flood the border when you come above the 4,000 or 5,000 thresholds in the bill. Right now it's at 6,700. You're going to exceed the 1.1 million figure. So it's probably going to be more than that. And oh, by the way, that 1.1 million, that only applies to the first year. And then after that, it's going to go up and up and up. You'll be guaranteed to get 3.6 million over 3 years. And then you'll lose the first 2 years of a potential Trump administration where you won't be allowed to secure the border. And we got one taker here. LJ Cantaloupe says, I'm going to do that. Thank you, sir. Well, thank you, LJ Cantaloupe, and thank you, everyone, for listening. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and contact your member of the House and your 2 senators and tell them to oppose the Lankford-Schumer bill. We have to secure the border, but this is not the way, and we shouldn't be locking in 2025 and 2026 and foreclosing any possibility of border security when we're in the middle of an election year, and the American people will decide if they want a president who actually wants to do something about this. Have a good day.